Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Follow Your Passion podcast. I'm your host, Erwin Wils. I'm a mindset and business strategist and founder of Millionaire Life Strategy. In this podcast, I'm interviewing my clients and other entrepreneurs that are following their passion and make a good living out of it. When you want to know more about me or what I can do for you, check out my website, millionaireLifestrategy.com. But first, check out this episode of Follow Your Passion. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Follow Your Passion. Let me introduce my guest of today. It's John Louizes. When you tell people that you want to follow your passion, they might reply, "Oh, that's sweet." John took that very literally. John's passions are fun, family, and legacy, and he pursues them every day by making candy. John is a third-generation candy maker, and Zeno's Boardwalk Sweet Shop can already be found on the East Coast and West Coast of Florida. Originated in Daytona Beach and known for the world-famous Taffy. I wonder when people start anchoring the Daytona Indy 500 to John's candy shops. Welcome, John. How are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah. So my first question, I'm from the Netherlands, so we're not familiar with all the different kinds of candy you sell in the US. So what's Taffy?
Taffy is a soft, chewy candy over there in Europe. It's probably called like a chew of some kind, but it's an aerated candy. Usually it's pulled on machines. If you've ever seen any kind of candy pullers that put air into a piece of candy, we use big mixers to whip candy. So it makes our taffy more fluffier and softer and chewier than traditional American saltwater taffy, which tends to be a little more firm and a little too hard for my liking.
Okay. So you are a third generation candy maker. So I guess that you grew up with candy around you, and did you get learned by your father?
Yes. So my great uncle started the business in 1948. My dad took it over. Zeno took it over in 1963. And then I took it over in 2003. And I remember we have, as well as candy stores, we also had some touristy gift shops. If you've ever been to Beach Town, they sell the keychains and the towels and the T-shirts. And we had a couple of those. So I worked in those at a fairly young age. But I started making candy probably when I was around 13 or 14. And I wouldn't call it necessarily making candy. I had an older brother, and he and my dad would make the candy, and I would clean between each batch. So I was basically a glorified mop hand for the first. But fortunately for me, my brother never liked the candy. He was always the artist kind of guy. So he's got his own business. He's an artist, and he deals with graphic design and all the other stuff. It really paved the way for me to come in, and I really enjoyed it. I actually always look forward to it. It was something that, back then when we were much smaller, it was a one-man operation. So I could go in any time of the day I wanted to make candy. We didn't have a viewing process for anyone to watch me make it. We didn't put on a show of any kind. So it's basically, I just wanted to get done when there was no one around so that I could really focus on the task at hand and not be distracted. And, our store at the time was only, and it's still the same size, about 800 square feet. I don't know what that is in the metric system, but our kitchen was about 200 square feet, which is very small. It's the size of a bedroom. So we had to make all our products in this little cramped kitchen. And I was always uncomfortable making it in front of people because it was just so packed and it just so disorganized. It felt disorganized. It was orchestrated chaos, I always tell her.
Yeah.
But now, being where we are now, we're open. We have viewing windows for people to see us make everything because we're in a much bigger space now, and it just makes life a lot easier.
Nice. Yeah. You got 4 stores, and I just wanted to say that you were conquering the East Coast. But one of the 4 stores actually on the West Coast of Florida, right?
Correct. So we have 4 Zeno's Boardwalk Sweet Shops, and we've done a very good job of, putting those strategically into good locations. I'm not big in just opening a store to open a store. I am very tentative, or like, I'm a creature of habit. So I get very scared to try new things and take new risks when I don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Yeah.
When it comes to locations, it's got to be the perfect spots. It's got to hit certain criteria that I just feel that will really help the success of our stores. Because I failed. I have thought my candy is so great and our ice cream is so great that no matter where I put a store, we're going to be very successful. And boy, was I wrong. So that was a life lesson I learned very early on. And, while there's no 100% guarantee of everything, there's steps to take to get a better chance of success. And we've kind of figured out what those are now. And then also, along with the Zenos, in the last 6 months, we took over a very successful family-owned business as well over in Tampa, which is the west coast of Florida. They have 3 ice cream shops named Strawhans, and they're always winning best in Tampa Bay for best ice cream. We make ice cream over there still. So we've managed to take those over the last 3 months. And as you mentioned earlier, Erwin, I'm big on legacy and helping remember those who got us to where we are today. And so that's a very big passion of mine to always, talk about my dad. And just yesterday was the 3-year anniversary of his passing. So it's like, it's very raw with me today. And it's my job to always make sure everyone remembers who Zena was. And with these other stores that we have over there, the Strawhans, Mr. Strawhan, who passed away around 5-6 years ago, she was a driving force of these stores. So the family is so happy that the businesses, they didn't really want to take it over, but the families are so happy that another family has taken it over who have made sure that we remember who Mrs. Strawhan was. And, I'm very big on I don't care about promoting myself. It's my kid's job to promote me. I'm fine, being behind, but it's remembering those because that's super important to me. You only live once, and it's important to show the people who made the greatest impact on you.
Nice. And it's actually very interesting point of view that you're putting in there, because when you start your entrepreneurship, most of the entrepreneurs want to leave a legacy, right? That the next generation can continue what you started. But your point of view is, when you talk about legacy, is remembering the persons that started the legacy.
Correct.
And that's beautiful. And just what you said, that you took over those 3 ice cream shops, and keeping their legacy alive, remembering who started it. That's a key part of it as well. And
yeah, because if they were unsuccessful stores or, not good businesses, we wouldn't keep the name. But she did such a great job of, people are asking me, are you going to change anything? I said, absolutely not. I go, they're the best in what they do. I can make the best better, but I'm not going to change being the best. And it seems throughout the years of becoming a manufacturer, I've somehow become an efficiencies expert. I don't know how that happened, but I've now kind of how to eliminate footsteps and wasted time and just making life easier. When we took the stores over, they were very cramped and not organized well. And it doesn't matter if they have 5 people or 50 people working behind the counter. They couldn't serve any more people than what they did. And just with a couple of restructuring of how we set the stores up, 5 people now can do literally twice the business what we could before. And it wasn't any rocket science. It's just my experience of being on a line and incorporating that into a retail environment. Yeah. And I don't mean the word expert. I always laugh when I hear the word expert. I'm not an expert or anything. I'm just someone that's failed over and over, but I'm still at it. So I guess I'm experienced. And I've been able to bring that into the stores. And, when my son, who's 13, started working for me last summer, I had that conversation with him that I was the boss's son. So I know what it's like to come into an environment and start working with people who are older than you and think you're entitled. And I was definitely the most entitled 13-year-old you'd ever met. And I give him the whole speech about respect is, it's earned, it's not given. And at the end of the day, he's got to be the hardest worker in the room because it's his name on the building. I named him after my father. He's Zeno. So if he doesn't care and he doesn't, want to work hard, no one else is. And it's his job to make sure that he steps up to the plate. And I was very proud of him. He's starting school, just ended here. So he's starting again this summer. So it's a fine line because my dad was pretty tough on me when we were in the store. And I'm pretty soft. I think I'm softer on my kids. I think I am. I don't know if I am or not. But I always have a fine line where if I think he's doing a good job, I still come in and I'm a little hard on him, just like, to keep him humble, I guess is the answer. If he wants it bad enough, he'll stick with it. And my dad, as a father and son, I can't think of a time where we ever argued when it came to the basic father-son stuff. But when it came to the business, even though it was mine for the last 20 years, he couldn't stay out of it. And that was where all the arguments, ensued. But, I miss him. I always told him I wouldn't miss the good days. I'd miss him yelling at me when he wasn't here because I don't have anyone to keep me in my check. My wife does a pretty good job, but she's still a player he was when it came to it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I can totally imagine that because with regards to your father, when he had to let go of the candy shops, it's also like letting go of your child because it has become some sort of child for him, right? And letting it go, it's like when you have a daughter and your daughter is marrying with somebody, you have to let her go, and somebody else more or less takes control of your daughter, and that's hard because you want to stay in control and do the best for her, right?
You hit it right on the head. So his friends and family, music, his hometown in Greece, and his business. I don't know which one he loved the most out of all four of those. And they rotated from time to time. And that was his story. We have a thing over here called the American Dream. He's an immigrant that came from Greece, looking to make a better life for himself. And the corner in which the flagship store, the original store, is at in Daytona Beach, that was where he would point at and say, someday I'm going to own that corner. So, with him and my mom, they worked hard and endless days and nights, 15, 16-hour days, slaving behind the stove, which I'm sure they didn't have air conditioning for most of the time, coming into the business. And it gets hot and humid in Daytona Beach, Florida. So he had to deal with that. And I had graduated from college and I had started to do things that I felt were like improvements, and he still couldn't let go. It's a long story I'm not going to get into, but basically I left. I was like, you know what? I just can't work with you anymore. I'm going to go become a pharmaceutical sales rep. So I ended up getting a job in Chicago to become a pharmaceutical sales rep. And as I'm getting ready to go to Chicago, he goes, I'll rent you out the store. Because I think he thinks if I had left to Chicago, I was never coming back. Meanwhile, I always wanted to come back. It was so I kind of bullied him out, in a good way, because it's what I wanted to do. And, and his best year was 9,000 pounds of taffy. And we're going to do, the next year I took over, we jumped up to 50,000. And it wasn't anything different. I didn't change anything, but it was more of a customer service based business now. Whereas before he had certain minimums, you couldn't, no sampling. You had to buy minimum a quarter pound. But I'm like, if this product is so good, let them buy it. Because once they try it, what's a piece of taffy cost me back then? A penny, 2 pennies? I don't even know what it was. I was like, but you're going to get it back once they've started to buy 1 or 2 pieces. And he never got that. And once he saw it, he was like, oh, okay, maybe you know something. Maybe you know something. So it was so funny because he wouldn't necessarily ever say anything. He'd kind of mimic or whisper that he was proud of me. But boy, did he brag about me to everyone else. So that was
yeah.
Find that out. They all go, your dad talks about you so great all the time. I was like, no, he could bring it this way too. He could bring it to me, make sure I miss him. But yeah, so it was his baby. That was his baby. So, but he left it in good hands. And that's the one important thing that I want to make sure I do as well, is leaving things better off than how you found them. And so it's my job, being a legacy guy, legacy enthusiast, I call myself. Actually, the title I've given myself is not the owner or it's a chief legacy officer. So as we're growing now, part of me wants to just find businesses, food-based, candy-based, ice cream-based, pizza-based, that have such great reputations that they really don't have an exit strategy. And I just feel like those are businesses that I don't know how good I am at starting things. But when it comes to taking over a well-oiled machine and just putting minimal improvements into it without compromising quality, I just think that's kind of where my niche is. And I work with my brother-in-law, my wife's brother, and he's a numbers guy and very task-oriented, whereas I'm more of the ideas guy. And I bring a creative element into it where it's okay, they sell this item, they sell all this ice cream, we're going to add candies too, and because we make the candies, and candies just add 20% to the sales no matter what. So it's and with minimal work, and that's where we're able to get to where we are today.
Nice. And another thing that I wanted to focus a little bit on, because it's not just making candy, right? If you take over and I tell a lot of people, you can excel at what you do best, right? Like making candy, but that doesn't make you an entrepreneur. And when I hear you speak, you're a true entrepreneur. You know what you're doing as an entrepreneur. You know where to position yourself, your candy shops, stuff like that. So how did you come with all those skills? Did you learn them by doing it, or?
I would say failure. So when it comes to experimenting or to opening a new stores, like I mentioned earlier, I had an ego. Our candy's the best. I could put it in off the beaten path. No, location. So that's ultimately when it comes to retail businesses, to me, location is the most important thing because it's worth to pay the extra money and rent to be in the prime location, or if you own the building or whatever, but it's worth it to pay, in my opinion, the more money, because then you don't have to spend that money on marketing. You've got all the walking traffic, you've got all the driving traffic of people seeing you every day. And that, that's worth what you pay.
Yeah.
But when it comes to candies and production, when you start getting into wholesale, you start to realize what you thought your costs are much less than what your costs actually are. I had no idea of overhead and, fixed costs. And I remember having a talk with my accountant, who's also my part-time CFO. He would tell me that a pound of taffy would cost me $1.75 or whatever. And I'd think, no, it cost me $1.25 a pound. And he's like, no, he goes, numbers don't lie. According to this, if you made 50,000 pounds of candy and these are your costs, it costs you $1.75. And I was like, wait a minute. I go, but I'm only charging $1.70 pound. And he goes, exactly. So we had that. Thank goodness we weren't big enough, because when I started wholesaling, I started doing it out of the back of the kitchen of the boardwalk location. Well, all the utilities and fixed costs and that whole operation are paid off by the retail side of the operation. So when you go move facility where you're now, paying rent there and utilities there and, all the other stuff now you got to cover those costs as well. So until you get a certain number in your sales, you have to make sure. So that was the biggest lesson I learned. And I've been so lucky, people get breaks no matter how it is. The fortunate ones, the people who really make it, always get a break. My break was ultimately, I had my parents' business who basically handed me a very successful business. So that successful business was able to drive the growth of everything else we did, because of all the different failings and experiments and different candies and different trying to packaging and all that other outlets we try to get into. I had that boardwalk location, feeding and funneling funds to help with cash flow and all those other things that come. So the best thing to learn, I do jujitsu with my children, and, there's only winning or learning, because when you lose, you learn not to get beat by that again.
Exactly.
And so that to me is putting my children in uncomfortable situations, being in those uncomfortable situations. So even now, as a 45-year-old guy, I'm taking singing lessons. I'm starting to do these podcasts, not because I seek out to do them, but they'll make me a little uncomfortable. And, once you get over to something of being uncomfortable and you're comfortable in it, now you've just grown into something else. Yeah. And that's, that would be the biggest success, is learning from the failures and ultimately just having a great team of people around you. In this case, I have my wife, my family, so.
Nice. Yeah. And there are actually two important points you're mentioning there, is that as an entrepreneur, you should be flexible and accept that you will make mistakes. You just have to learn from it. You shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes. You should learn from your mistakes, because they're the biggest learnings that you can get, actually. And have a great supporting team behind you and around you is very important to succeed, actually, and to persevere and to do the things you're doing.
I pride myself. So we, at the factory itself, I'd say all in, we're about 50 employees. If you add all the stores, we're probably around 50 employees. But at the factory, there's a given 10 to 12 of us every day. And I pride myself on being the dumbest one in that building. So, it's silly for me to bring in people that I believe are experts or have potential to be very good at what they do, to come in and start undermining them and not giving them the room to grow. I check and verify, but I'm not a machines person. I don't understand engineering. I don't know how to put things together. I understand what it's supposed to do, and I'm pretty good at looking at any of the machines actually and telling you ultimately what the problem is. I just don't know how to fix them. So I'm not the one that's going to unscrew it. And I just tell my team what to do, and they do it. And it's amazing. Once I've kind of delegated that response, if you look at me, I've got a full-grown beard right now. I've kind of done a staycation this week. So I'm basically forcing the plant operation to run by itself, because I know it can. And they have been basically asking for the ability to do it without me, overseeing it. And my thinking is, okay, I've been talking to them every day. And so far, so good. I know what they produce. I know they're all tasting the candy, so they're all saying it's on par. And I told them to put some aside so I could try some next week. Basically, I'm an ultimate quality control manager as well. Yeah. But the goal is to get the factory to running without me, which I know it can. And then I get to go out and try to do some more fun projects and try to grow.
Perfect. And that's what one of my coaches is calling Swiss money. He loves Swiss money, and not the money from Switzerland, but sales while I sleep soundly. That's actually, if you're able to make yourself obsolete within your company, make yourself redundant, that's almost like the ultimate goal, because then that you can spend your time with your family if they need it or they want it, when you want it. You can take a vacation if you want to, and you can focus on growing and expanding your business. Maybe there's another market that you haven't thought of that could benefit from your service as well. You can build strategic partnerships with other entrepreneurs. You can put your focus and attention on your key customers and make their experience with you as well. Make them raving fans of your business and your products. Yeah. And that's perfect. When you're able to do that, life starts to be so much more fun.
Yes. Yeah. And I love what I do, and I won't ever take a task or a project. Yeah, I'm a man of low means. I've got a 2014 pickup truck. I don't need, very good things. I like to have a good time just like anyone else. But at the end of the day, I just want to hang out with my family, hang out with my wife and kids. And if I can't coach a soccer game, if I can't go to a jiu-jitsu tournament, I won't take a project, because, you only got one life. I mean, how much more do I need? The only time I ever want to do more growth really is if an opportunity comes up and everything else is taken care of. And so I try to do a really good job of taking care of, I've got coworkers that have been with me 5, 10, 20 years. Like the whole time I've had it, they've been And my parents, they had employees for over 30 years as well, which is unheard of. Like, it's really hard to find people that will stay with a company for so long.
Yeah.
But in the growth, I try to do my best. And I think they would tell you that I do a pretty good job of including them in the growth. So when it comes to new projects, and if I have a partner in this thing over there, and let's say 10% of it, I will then take a certain amount, usually it's 5 to 10% of what I get from there, and spread it out to the people of my other businesses. So they're like kind of like, part of the growth as well. And they've got no like issues or bitterness that Johnny's doing all this stuff. And we're here. They're like, nah, they're like, this is the best thing ever, because I get to go focus on the new headaches. They just got to deal with the day-to-day operations, of which we've basically written all the systems for and all the plans for, so they know how to handle most doomsday situations. But that Swiss thing is great. I love that, because, we always have that conversation about talking about going to like an overnight shift, or like, and that like terrifies me. And I'm like, no, I like to sleep at night. And ultimately, I'm going to get those phone calls if something goes wrong at 3 o'clock in the middle of the night. But if we're growing enough and we've delegated enough to where I'm obsolete, I'll do all the overnight shifts you want, because I won't be phone calls.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's wonderful that you said so. That my company name is called Millionaire Life Strategy, right? A lot of people think it's all about the money, but it isn't. A millionaire life means you get to do what you want, whenever you want, with who you want to do it, right? At any place you want to, and it doesn't necessarily take $1 million or more. Just like you said, you're a man of little means. You don't need to drive a Ferrari just because you can, but there's no need for it, right? You do what's important to you, and you're able to fulfill that, and that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, and I kind of had a breakthrough myself this last week. So, boy, when you get a good coach or a good teacher that you trust, boy, that could be one of the most powerful tools. Because I mentioned before, I do jujitsu, and I started taking singing lessons. And like, when it comes to these things, when you're kind of stuck in your ways, the way I am now, from habits of 45 years, when you have someone tell you it's gonna be there, it's gonna get there, you just have to trust the process. You're gonna get there. I can't hit this note. It's in your mouth. I'm telling you, you're gonna hit this. Oh, I can't do this move in jiu-jitsu. You're gonna get it. All of a sudden, one day you're doing it, and you don't even realize how you got to the point that you're gonna do it. There's that saying about, the first million is always the hardest to make. And I would definitely say that's the most true, because you've dealt with all the failings to get you to where it is that you need to go. And once you've gotten there, okay, to get to this next step, I'm going to have to deal with all this, garbage again. But I know if I just trust the process and keep doing what I'm doing, you can make it to the next levels. And exactly what you said, I can go vacation in the greatest place in the world, or I can go into this little hometown place that's 5 minutes from Daytona Beach. As long as I'm with my friends or with my kids, I'm still going to have the greatest time. So it's definitely more of a mindset than it is a bank account. You're 100% right.
Yeah. And I love what you said about, I used to with my clients also a lot that, are you familiar with the Strongest Man competition?
Yes.
Where there's one part of that competition that they have to tow a lower truck, right?
Yes.
And it takes a huge amount of effort and force to get this truck moving, right? But once it's moving, it starts moving easier. And at the end, they're actually running over the finish line with the lorry truck behind them, right?
Yes.
And I always say that it's the hardest thing is to make something out of nothing, right? But the moment there is something, no matter how small, it's far more easier to make that something in something more. And the only trick is you have to keep momentum, right? Like, but sometimes people are only looking at the finish line, right? And they think they can't do it. For instance, if I would ask you, could you carry a cow on your shoulders? What would you say?
Nope.
No, right?
Correct.
But if I would ask you, could you carry just a newborn calf on your shoulders?
Yes.
Right? So if there was a newborn calf, right, and you go into the meadow and you put that calf on your shoulders and you do like 3 squats or 5 squats with it, right? That wouldn't be an issue, right?
Yeah.
Let's suppose you would do that every day with the same calf, right?
Yeah.
After 1 year, that calf has become a cow.
Yeah.
And with such a future journey, would you be able to carry a cow on your shoulders?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. It's like how do you eat the elephant, or is it the whale? One piece at a time.
Yeah, it's the same. They're big, Yeah. But it's just, and it doesn't matter if your goals are very high or might seem impossible, but they should challenge you, and you shouldn't forget to enjoy the journey on the way, right? And that's about celebrate each little win you make and make the next one a little better.
Yeah, I've got no issue celebrating the little wins. My wife will tell you that I'm the nicest narcissist you've ever met. So whenever we do something small that is good, boy, do I think it's the greatest thing in the whole wide world. And I have this annoyingly so positive attitude that it's just a great thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I've got a really good team around me that they can do the things I don't want to do. And, going back to your Swiss comment, it's also now at the time I get to do whatever it is I want to do in the operation. So if I want to make candy that day, I'll make candy that day. If I don't want to do it, if I want to go work on the website, I'll work on the website. So it's the ability to do whatever I want. Boy, if I'm going to take anything home, that's going to be it, because that really hit something on the head for me. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. And thinking about and hearing your story, then one of my coaches also said that you should actually call yourself the CEO of the company, but not in a normal definition, but the chief experience officer.
I like that.
Right? Because what I hear, you take very good care, not your employees, they're your team members, right? Because as I understand correctly, you make them feel like part of the team, right? And it makes them more concerned with the company. They will take that extra step if it makes the company better, and they're proud to do that, right? So you make them team members, but you also take care of your clients. So I think Chief Experience Officer would fit you great as well.
I really do like that, very much so. And we've been very lucky. Usually, we know you're either going to be with us for 2 weeks or 2 more years. So we pretty much know. I have a ranking system, and I tell them, I go, are you going to come in with a good personality and a good attitude? That's number one. I go, if you don't have that, just go somewhere else, because I don't care how great of a worker you are. I don't care your numbers. If you're going to make me or anyone else here miserable, you're done. So number 1 is most important. 2 through 5 can be taught. So I can't teach you to be a nice person. You have to be a nice person. So if you're not over the top, obnoxious, nice and kind and willing to tell a joke every once in a while, you're probably not going to fit. It doesn't mean you have to be talkative and make a joke, but you have to be approachable, I guess, is more of the thing. We don't want anyone in a facility that people are afraid to ask questions to, because I have made the Chief Experience Officer. I have made every mistake there is to make 5 million times. And the only time I ever get upset at the factory is one, if they try to do something unsafe wise. That's one where I kind of, the Greek in me comes out and the hands start.
Yeah.
And 2, if they make a mistake and they don't tell me about it right away, because I can fix any mistake. If you make a blue lemon, no problem, because we also make a blueberry lemonade taffy. So we'll just make a yellow blueberry. And when you put them together, no one ever knows the difference. So when they try to fix it and I'm only 5-second walk away from where they are, that's when I lose it. So, but the good news is when I do go all Greek and I do the yelling, it sets it. I'm not really upset. I'm just doing it because they're like, oh my goodness, Johnny's a lunatic after all. And then they remember not to do that anymore. So
yeah, it makes an impact.
yeah, I'm laughing about it 5 seconds afterwards, but and I'm also a throwing you to the wolves kind of approach instructor, I guess, as well, because my buddy, my plant manager, Tim, has been with me for 20 years now. I showed him how to make fudge in one day, like, and then 2 hours, and he only got to do 2 batches, and it's a complicated process. I'm like, okay, I just showed you, go. And he goes, but I'm going to mess it up. I go, no, you're just going to learn how not to make the fudge. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Within a day, he's the best. He's the one that taught everyone else how to make fudge. And it's so funny. He would always say, when we're talking about learning new things, and he goes, you didn't even teach me how to make. I had to learn on my own like that. It's like, I go, that's the only way to learn. I go, I can't teach you. I was like, if I'm okay with the mistakes, if I'm okay with the bad product, and we have to throw stuff away, but I have faith in that you will be able to do the job I need you to do. I'm like, what's 3, 4, 5 batches of fudge in the course of 20 years? It's nothing. And so it's giving them, they take ownership on it. And they also have stories of how they knew when they wanted to stay working here is of a mistake of when they made, because I said, I poured ice cream into the ice cream machine, but not closing the bottom cap off. And it just came, the liquid came out and makes the biggest mess ever.
Yeah.
And mine, who's been with me now 4 years now, I walked right by as the milk is coming out of the machine. I go, you forgot to put the cap on, huh? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I go, well, I've done that 5 million times before. I go, you gonna do it again? He goes, nope. I go, all right, then we're good to go.
Yeah. But that's also it's also creating a safe environment, right? If you're allowing them to make mistakes and learn from it, it's the best teaching school in the world.
Yeah, and we had I had a real epiphany about, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, that I can't expect people to do what I do, nor should they want to, nor should they have to. This is my business. And so if I can do something at 100%, I figured a home run employee, someone that is amazing, is 75% of what I can do. If they can do 75%, oh my goodness, they are like, rock stars. And then, everyone's got a bit of an ego on them. So then if I could start enticing them, like, oh my goodness, you're almost as good as me. You're the best I've ever seen do this. You're like amazing, almost as good as me. Boy, do they then all of a sudden get to 80% and then 85%, so it's, you're incredible. This is the best I've ever seen. And I only want the people that can try to be better than me. And and whether they are or not, it's not important to me. I just want them to try and and just care what they do, and know that we are not just servicing ourselves for a job. We're making experience. I don't say we make candy all the time. I always tell people I make experiences. We've got great parents bringing their great grandchildren to our stores because they came back in the 40s and the 50s. And so, that it's really important that that little store, and wherever it is we hopefully branch out to successfully, we're creating memories. Because I remember my memories of my grandmother, and not at the Boardwalk store, but when she would take me out for pancakes or waffles. It's the food experience I always remember the most. I'm a fat kid on the inside. So, I always remember things by the sweets. And of course, I sell candy and ice cream. So what better way to have people, remember those that they loved. So.
Yeah, nice. Replying to that is, of course, candy and sweets and taste can bring up great memories, right? But I guess you should also stay innovative, right? So how do you combine that? At the one part you got let's say the traditional candies that cross generation over generation over generation. And they want to have the same experience over and over again. But you should also innovate, come with new tastes and sweets and candies. So how do you combine that?
So I feel my personal palate is very good when it comes to tasting how things should taste. And we have definitely tweaked recipes over the years because when it comes to candy, which like saltwater taffy, which tastes have become more accepting of tangy and like, sour. So, and I don't mean sour like, oh my goodness, it's so sour, but like where it hits you back here and like, it really pops the flavor senses. So as time has gone by, we've intensified the flavors a little bit. We've made like, citric acid is something you put into candy, which gives it that tartness to it. And we've just adjusted it accordingly, like, because stuff that was made when my dad was making candy, it just wouldn't be considered flavorful in today's standards. And, when it comes to new creations, we just came up with a pickle taffy. We have 101 flavors of taffy, the most, I believe, in the world. I'm not 100% sure, but I find it hard to believe anyone's making more flavors than us. We'll do some weird one. We have some girls that work at the factory that love pickles. So I'm like, well, let's just try it. And they think it's the greatest thing we've ever. So I'm like, okay, so we'll just keep it for a year. And then, we'll get rid of a flavor at 101. We'll get rid of one or two every year. We'll have like a little taffy funeral for them. And then we'll introduce like, new flavor. But the staple 50 flavors, the vanillas, the chocolates, the bananas, they don't go anywhere. They stay, how it is they are. But you just introduce new ones because like, growing up in Florida, I'd never heard of, we didn't have avocados growing up in Daytona Beach, Florida. So now, guacamole's everywhere. So as new products get introduced, and acai and all those other kinds of things that just really weren't around. Like, I don't remember raspberry vinaigrette growing up as a kid, but now, you see it everywhere. Yeah. So as other people get creative in the fruits and the vegetables and other foods that we make, the desserts that we make, I can easily incorporate that into some kind of candy or ice cream. And nice. That's how we became to make so many taffy flavors. We had started to make the ice cream. And I was like, well, why can't we make a cookies and cream taffy or cookie dough taffy and pistachio taffy? These are traditional flavors that do very well. And sure enough, as soon as we did that, we were kind of groundbreakers when it came to that. So it's there. It's all there. You just have to be willing to do it. And, like I said, I have that busy location on the boardwalk that's been able to fund all these experiments that have proven to be successful or unsuccessful. And even when they're not unsuccessful, it's something that people think, oh my goodness, I tried maple bacon taffy from that place. So it was like, it was an experience. So they'll definitely remember it.
Nice. I think we can talk for hours on those subjects, John. So I just had two more questions for you, if you're okay with that. Sure. If you could share a little tip or little piece of wisdom to the audience with regards to entrepreneurship or following your passion or whatsoever, what would that be?
I'd say one, surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed. The most important lesson I can give anyone or advice I can give anyone, and they never talk about in business school and they never talk, is whoever you decide to spend the rest of your life with, that better be the best important decision you ever make. Because I was very lucky to marry a girl who was not only is she the smartest, she's quite exceptional. She was valedictorian of her high school class, full scholarships to the University of Florida, got accepted to all the different law schools she wanted to go to. But at the end of the day, she just wanted to be a housewife. And she didn't want to do any of those things. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be a candy man. You want to maybe get together and we'll get married? Like, she's like, yes. She accepted this little dinky candy man. And because of her, I really believe I've been able to succeed because she worries about, we work together as well. So, before we had children, it was just her and I. She would handle all the stuff I didn't want to do, which is all the organization and the task. Whereas she allowed me to be creative to where I could start growing the business when I didn't even realize we were growing the business. This was just something fun. It's like more of a hobby, like playing soccer. anything. And she worries about every little detail that has no significance whatsoever. And then I'm always there to talk her down. It's not a big guy. But what she's amazing at is when things do go bad and there is a bad situation in which I then start to stress because nothing really gets to me. She is then there to pick me up and say, hey, you've got to wake up, get out of this. You're going to be fine. Go forward. So surrounding yourself with a spouse, a partner, a business partner who have great talents that you don't have so that you can fit together and make a very good team and you have to trust them. And, my wife's brother, who I run the Straw Hen stores with and other ventures as well, most trustworthy guy I know. If I always tell everyone, if he's going to rip me off, then I deserve to get ripped off. I'm willing to live with that,
Yeah.
The guy, I've been in that family as long as they have. So almost. So surrounding yourself with a great partner and a great team is the best thing.
Perfect. Thanks, John. If people want to know more about you, get in touch with you, maybe even order that world famous Taffy for you, how can they do that?
Sure. If they want to order any candy from us, our website is worldsmostfamoustaffy.com. Daytona Beach is known as the world's most famous beach. So, of course, we have the world's most famous taffy. So worldsmostfamoustaffy.com. And if people want to reach to me directly for wholesale inquiries or anything like that, they can, of course, go to the website. But I'm also on LinkedIn under John Louizes. So very easy to get a hold of. No criminal record that I know of. So no one anywhere. So I'm easy to find.
Perfect. I truly love this conversation, your enthusiasm about your business as well. Wonderful episode. Thanks a lot, John, for your input. And let's stay in touch.
You got it, Erwin. And I definitely would love to do it again. And of course, if you're ever in Florida, I'll show you around the place. I think you'll love it.
I hope you liked this episode. Make sure to check out the other episodes because each one is filled with interesting and inspiring stories and energy. Are you following your passion as well and make a good living out of it? Contact me and you could be my next guest. Would you like to follow your passion but are not there yet? Check out my website millionairelifestrategy.com and book an appointment to discover what I could do for you. Don't forget to share the podcast with your friends so that they get inspired as well.